The Afghan mountains stretched endlessly under the pale morning sun, their jagged peaks cutting through wisps of cloud like ancient stone knives. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison adjusted his tactical scope and scanned the valley below, where intelligence suggested a high-value target was hiding in a compound nestled between two ridges. The mission had seemed straightforward when briefed back at base: infiltrate, capture, or eliminate the target, and extract. But Morrison had learned long ago that nothing in Afghanistan was ever straightforward. His team of 6 Navy SEALs had been moving through the treacherous terrain for 18 hours, following goat paths and using natural cover to avoid detection. Morrison's radio crackled softly in his ear as Petty Officer First Class Tommy Rodriguez, their communications specialist, updated him on their position. They were less than 2 kilometers from the target compound, moving according to plan. The team consisted of Morrison's most trusted operators. Rodriguez handled communications and served as their tech expert, while Chief Petty Officer Mike Chen managed explosives and breaching operations. Petty Officer Second Class David Ghostwalker was their reconnaissance specialist, moving like a shadow through enemy territory. Petty Officer Second Class Alex Thompson served as their medic and secondary sniper, while Petty Officer Third Class Marcus Bull Johnson was their heavy weapons specialist and the team's muscle. As they crested a rocky outcrop, Walker raised his fist, the signal for immediate halt. Morrison dropped to a prone position behind a boulder, his heart rate barely elevated despite the altitude and physical exertion. Years of training had conditioned his body to handle stress and maintain peak performance under any circumstances. Walker's voice came through their encrypted communication system in barely a whisper. "Multiple tangos spotted. Looks like security has been tripled since our last intel update." Morrison crawled forward to Walker's position and accepted the offered binoculars. The compound below was much more heavily defended than their briefing had indicated. Instead of the estimated 12 to 15 enemy combatants, Morrison counted at least 40 armed individuals moving between buildings. Worse yet, he spotted several technical vehicles, pickup trucks mounted with heavy machine guns, positioned at strategic points around the perimeter. "This doesn't match our intelligence," Chen whispered, sliding up beside them. "Someone either screwed up the numbers, or our target got wind of our approach." Morrison studied the compound's layout through his scope. The main building where their target was supposedly located sat in the center of the complex, surrounded by several smaller structures that appeared to house the security force. High stone walls encircled the entire compound, with only 2 apparent entry points, a main gate facing the valley floor and a smaller service entrance on the eastern side. "Rodriguez, any chatter on their communications?" Morrison asked. "Negative, sir. Either they're maintaining radio silence or using frequencies we're not monitoring," came the reply. Thompson, who had been scanning the surrounding ridgelines with his sniper rifle, added another complication. "Sir, I've got movement on the high ground to our north and south. Looks like they've posted sentries on the overlooking positions. We've got eyes on us from multiple angles." Morrison felt the familiar weight of command decisions pressing down on him. Every choice he made in the next few minutes could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. His team was outnumbered at least 6 to 1, possibly more, and they were in enemy territory with limited options for extraction if things went wrong. "Options?" he asked quietly, knowing his team would provide honest assessments without sugarcoating the situation. Walker spoke first. "We could pull back, call for air support, and level the place. But that eliminates any chance of taking the target alive for intelligence. The compound's too well fortified for a direct assault with our current numbers," Chen added. "Even with our superior training and equipment, those odds are suicide." Johnson, ever the optimist when it came to firepower solutions, suggested, "We could try to draw them out, maybe create a diversion that splits their forces." Morrison weighed their options carefully. The target they were after, a Taliban commander named Khalil Nazari, had information about planned attacks on American bases throughout the region. Dead, he was worth something. Alive and talking, he could save hundreds of American lives. Before Morrison could make his decision, Rodriguez's voice cut through their tactical discussion with urgency. "Sir, we've got company. 3 vehicles approaching from the valley floor, looks like a supply convoy." Morrison quickly surveyed the approaching vehicles through his scope. Two trucks and what appeared to be a civilian van, moving slowly along the rough mountain road that led to the compound's main entrance. As they drew closer, he could see armed guards in the truck beds and figured this might be the opportunity they needed. "Change of plans," Morrison announced. "We're going to hit the convoy, use the confusion to get inside the compound's perimeter." The team immediately began repositioning themselves along the convoy's route. Morrison chose a narrow section of the road where the vehicles would have to slow down to navigate between two large boulders. It was a natural choke point that would give them maximum advantage while minimizing the convoy's ability to maneuver or escape. Walker and Thompson took positions on the high ground with their rifles, while Morrison, Chen, Johnson, and Rodriguez prepared for the close-quarters engagement. The plan was simple: disable the vehicles first, neutralize the guards, and commandeer at least one truck to use for their assault on the compound. As the convoy approached their position, Morrison could see the lead truck was packed with supplies, likely ammunition and weapons based on how low it sat on its suspension. The second truck carried what looked like fuel barrels, while the van's windows were tinted too darkly to see inside. "Wait for my mark," Morrison whispered into his radio. The lead truck was 50 meters away. 40. 30. The driver was scanning the roadside cautiously, clearly aware that this stretch of mountain road was dangerous territory. 20 meters. "Execute," Morrison commanded. Thompson's rifle spoke first, a single suppressed shot that took out the lead truck's front tire and sent it careening into one of the boulders. Walker's shot followed immediately, shattering the windshield of the second truck and eliminating the driver. The convoy came to a chaotic halt as guards began jumping from the vehicles, shouting commands in Pashto and trying to establish defensive positions. Morrison and his team moved like a well-oiled machine. Chen's explosive charges, pre-positioned along the roadside, detonated in sequence, creating a wall of smoke and debris that disoriented the enemy fighters. Johnson emerged from cover with his machine gun, laying down suppressing fire that kept the guards from organizing any coherent response. The engagement was over in less than 90 seconds. 12 enemy combatants eliminated, 3 vehicles disabled but potentially reparable, and, most importantly, the element of surprise maintained. The compound's defenders had undoubtedly heard the explosions and gunfire, but, from their distance, it would be difficult to determine exactly what had happened. Rodriguez was already working on the radio of the least damaged truck, trying to monitor any communications between the convoy and the compound. "Sir, getting some chatter. Sounds like they're asking the convoy to report their status." Morrison made another quick decision. "Rodriguez, you speak Pashto. Get on their radio and report that the convoy hit an IED but is proceeding to the compound. Buy us some time." While Rodriguez worked his linguistic skills, the rest of the team quickly searched the vehicles for useful intelligence and supplies. What they found exceeded their expectations. The first truck contained not just ammunition and weapons, but detailed maps of American base locations throughout the region. The fuel truck carried enough diesel to power a small village. But it was the van that provided the most interesting discovery. "Sir, you need to see this," Thompson called from beside the van's rear doors. Morrison approached and looked inside. Instead of more supplies or additional fighters, the van contained sophisticated communication equipment, computers, and what appeared to be surveillance gear. More importantly, there were several folders of documents written in both Pashto and what looked like operational plans marked with American base names and coordinates. This isn't just a supply convoy, Morrison realized. This is intelligence. Nazari was expecting operational updates. Chen examined the communication equipment more closely. This gear is pretty sophisticated. They've been monitoring our frequencies, tracking our patrol patterns. No wonder they've been one step ahead of us lately. The discovery changed the entire dynamic of their mission. They weren't just hunting one Taliban commander anymore, they had stumbled onto what appeared to be a major intelligence operation that posed an immediate threat to American forces throughout the region. "New plan," Morrison announced. "We use their own intelligence against them. Rodriguez, continue monitoring their communications. Everyone else, we're going to impersonate this convoy and get inside that compound. the team quickly redistributed their gear between the vehicles, with Morrison, Chen, and Johnson taking the lead truck while Walker, Thompson, and Rodriguez followed in the van with its valuable intelligence cargo. They left the damaged fuel truck behind, but not before Chen planted enough explosives to create a significant distraction if needed later. As they approached the compound's main gate, Morrison felt the familiar pre-combat tension building in his chest. Every mission carried risks, but infiltrating an enemy stronghold while outnumbered 40-6 pushed those risks to levels that would make most military planners recommend calling in airstrikes and walking away. The compound's main gate was exactly as their satellite imagery had indicated, heavy wooden doors reinforced with metal plates and flanked by guard towers. As their convoy approached, guards emerged from the towers and one of the buildings to direct them to what appeared to be a loading area inside the compound. Morrison kept his face down and his cap pulled low as they passed through the gate, but he used his peripheral vision to catalog everything he saw. The compound was even larger than it had appeared from the mountainside, with multiple levels built into the natural slope of the terrain. The main building where Nazari was likely located sat at the highest point, overlooking the entire complex. They were directed to park near a cluster of smaller buildings that appeared to serve as barracks and storage facilities. As soon as their vehicles stopped, several men approached to help unload supplies. This was the moment of greatest danger, close contact with enemy fighters who might recognize that Morrison's team didn't belong. "Stay calm, follow my lead," Morrison whispered to his team as the first Taliban fighter approached their truck. The man spoke rapidly in Pashto, gesturing toward the back of their truck. Rodriguez, still maintaining his cover as a local driver, responded in fluent Pashto, explaining that they had encountered some problems on the road but were now ready to deliver the promised supplies. For several tense minutes, the team played their roles perfectly. They unloaded boxes and crates while Taliban fighters directed them toward storage areas, all the while noting defensive positions, counting enemy personnel, and identifying potential escape routes. Morrison was beginning to think they might actually pull off the infiltration when everything went wrong. One of the Taliban commanders emerged from the main building and began walking directly toward their vehicles, accompanied by two armed guards. Even from a distance, Morrison could see the man was asking questions and pointing at their convoy. "Trouble coming," Morrison whispered to his team. "Be ready." The commander approached Rodriguez, who was still playing the role of local driver, and began speaking rapidly in Pashto. Morrison couldn't understand the words, but the commander's body language suggested he was suspicious about something. Rodriguez responded calmly, but Morrison could see tension building in his shoulders, never a good sign. Whatever the commander was asking, Rodriguez was having trouble providing satisfactory answers. Then, the commander pointed directly at Morrison and said something that required no translation. He wanted Morrison to come over and answer questions personally. Morrison's mind raced through options. He could try to maintain the cover story, but his appearance and inability to speak Pashto would quickly expose them. He could signal his team to begin immediate combat operations, but they were surrounded and outnumbered in the middle of the enemy stronghold. Or he could try to buy time and hope an opportunity for escape would present itself. Before he could decide, the decision was made for him. One of the commander's guards noticed the American-made radio clip to Thompson's belt and shouted an alarm in Pashto. Immediately, weapons throughout the compound began swinging toward Morrison's team. "Contact!" Morrison shouted, drawing his sidearm and putting 2 rounds center mass into the commander before diving for cover behind their truck. The compound erupted into chaos as Taliban fighters poured out of buildings from every direction, automatic weapons fire echoing off the stone walls. Morrison's team reacted with the precision of countless training exercises, taking defensive positions and returning fire while trying to work their way toward better cover. Walker and Thompson, positioned near the van, began picking off targets with their rifles while Chen prepared explosive charges that could create an exit through the compound's walls. Johnson's machine gun provided suppressing fire that temporarily drove the enemy fighters back, but Morrison knew they only had minutes before the superior numbers would overwhelm them. "Rodriguez, call for extraction," Morrison ordered over the sound of gunfire. "Already on it, sir. But we're looking at 20 minutes minimum for air support to reach us." 20 minutes. In their current position, surrounded by 40-plus enemy fighters in a fortified compound, 20 minutes might as well be 20 hours. Morrison realized they needed a miracle, and they needed it fast. That's when the first long-range rifle shot cracked across the valley from the mountains above, and one of the Taliban fighters manning a machine gun position simply disappeared in a spray of red mist. Someone was out there. Someone with a very good rifle and the skill to use it effectively at extreme range. Morrison had no idea who their unexpected ally might be, but as another Taliban fighter dropped to a precision shot from the mountainside, he found himself grateful for any help they could get. The real question was whether this mysterious sniper could even the odds enough to give Morrison's team a fighting chance at survival, or if they were all about to die together in this remote Afghan compound, far from home and running out of time. 800 meters above the compound, Master Sergeant Elena Vasquez had been watching the Taliban stronghold through her rifle scope for the past 6 hours. She hadn't expected to find American forces in the valley today, but when she saw the convoy attack and recognized the tactical efficiency of the assault team, she knew these weren't ordinary Afghan fighters. The way they moved, the precision of their attacks, and their immediate shift to defensive positions when discovered, this had to be a special operations unit. Elena had been tracking the Taliban commander Khalil Nazari for 3 weeks, ever since her CIA handler had informed her that Nazari possessed intelligence about a planned attack on forward operating base Chapman. Her mission was simple: eliminate the target and extract any intelligence possible. But finding an opportunity to get close to Nazari had proved nearly impossible due to his heavy security and paranoid nature. As a former Army sniper turned CIA contractor, Elena specialized in long-range elimination missions in denied territory. She worked alone, moved fast, and left no trace. Her reputation in certain military circles was legendary. Soldiers called her the Angel of Death, not because she was cruel, but because her targets never saw her coming, and when she struck, it was swift and final. Now, watching through her scope as American soldiers fought for their lives in the compound below, Elena faced a decision that went against every principle of her solo operations. Her mission was to eliminate Nazari, not to rescue trapped soldiers. Getting involved in a firefight would compromise her position, reveal her presence, and make her primary objective infinitely more difficult. But, as she watched Taliban fighters moving to surround the Americans, Elena found herself adjusting her rifle and chambering around. Sometimes the mission had to evolve. Her first shot took out the machine gunner who had the Americans pinned behind their vehicles. At 800 meters, with mountain winds and heat distortion, it was a challenging shot that required precise calculation of ballistics and environmental factors. The bullet struck exactly where Elena intended, eliminating the immediate threat to the trapped soldiers below. Through her scope, she could see the American team leader, a tall man with the bearing of an experienced officer, glance up toward the mountainside where her shot had originated. He was smart enough to recognize help when it arrived, even if he didn't know where it came from. Elena began systematically targeting Taliban fighters who posed the greatest threat to the Americans. Her rifle was a custom-modified M24, equipped with a high-magnification scope and firing match-grade ammunition. Each shot was carefully planned, aimed, and executed. She didn't spray bullets hoping to hit something. Every round had a specific target and purpose. Her second shot eliminated a Taliban fighter who was maneuvering to flank the Americans from the east. Her third took out another machine gunner who was setting up a position in one of the guard towers. With each shot, Elena slightly altered her position, moving along the ridgeline to prevent the enemy from determining her exact location. The Taliban fighters in the compound were beginning to panic. They could hear the crack of Elena's rifle echoing off the mountain walls, but they couldn't identify where the shots were coming from. Several fighters began firing wildly at the mountainsides, but their rounds fell hundreds of meters short of Elena's actual position. From her elevated position, Elena had a perfect view of the entire compound and could see things the Americans below couldn't. She watched as a group of Taliban fighters attempted to circle around behind the trapped soldiers, using the compound's buildings as cover. She methodically picked them off one by one, each shot perfectly placed to eliminate the threat while remaining hidden from the remaining enemy forces. Elena's radio crackled with an encrypted frequency she recognized as military emergency communications. The Americans were calling for air support, but she could hear from the responses that help was still 15 minutes away. In a firefight, 15 minutes was an eternity. She continued providing overwatch, her shots creating confusion and fear among the Taliban forces. Some fighters began abandoning their positions, unsure where the deadly accurate fire was coming from. Others attempted to take cover in buildings, but Elena's elevated position gave her angles on targets that thought they were safely hidden. Through her scope, Elena saw the American team leader making hand signals to his men. They were preparing to move, probably attempting to fight their way to a more defensible position. She adjusted her aim to provide covering fire for their movement. As the Americans began their tactical withdrawal toward better cover, Elena increased her rate of fire. She dropped 3 Taliban fighters who tried to pursue the team, then shifted targets to eliminate a group that was attempting to set up a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. The RPG would have been devastating to the Americans in their exposed position. Elena had been operating in Afghanistan for 8 months, longer than most CIA contractors stayed in country. She had eliminated 17 high-value targets and provided intelligence that had prevented numerous attacks on American forces. But she had never been in a situation quite like this, providing direct fire support for ground troops while maintaining her cover and operational security. Her ammunition supply was becoming a concern. She had started the mission with 40 rounds of match-grade ammunition, and she was down to less than 20. Every shot had to count, not just for accuracy, but for conservation of resources. If this firefight continued much longer, she would have to switch to her backup rifle with standard ammunition, accurate enough for most purposes, but not capable of the precision shots that were keeping the Americans alive. Through her scope, Elena watched as one of the Americans, a heavy-set man with a machine gun, lay down suppressing fire while his teammates moved to a better position behind a stone wall. The movement was executed with military precision, each man covering the others as they advanced. These weren't ordinary soldiers, they were special operations troops, probably Navy SEALs based on their tactical procedures. Elena shifted her aim to a group of Taliban fighters who were attempting to flank the Americans' new position. Her shot took out their leader, causing the others to hesitate and seek better cover. She used their confusion to eliminate 2 more fighters who had exposed themselves trying to get a better shooting angle. The Americans were now in a relatively defensible position behind the stone wall, but they were still surrounded and outnumbered. Elena could see Taliban reinforcements arriving from outside the compound, more vehicles carrying additional fighters who would tip the numerical balance even further against the trapped soldiers. She made a tactical decision that went against her training. Instead of continuing to provide overwatch from her current position, Elena began moving down the mountainside toward the compound. She couldn't eliminate 40-plus enemy fighters with her remaining ammunition, but she might be able to get close enough to make direct contact with the American team and coordinate a joint breakout attempt. Moving down the steep mountain terrain while carrying her rifle and equipment required careful attention to both speed and stealth. Elena had to reach a position where she could support the Americans more effectively, but she couldn't afford to reveal her location to the Taliban fighters below. As she moved, Elena continued to monitor the firefight through her scope when possible. The Americans were holding their position, but their ammunition would eventually run low. The Taliban fighters were becoming more organized, establishing overlapping fields of fire that would make any American movement extremely dangerous. Elena reached a rocky outcrop about 400 meters from the compound that provided good concealment and an excellent view of the battlefield. From this position, she could see details that hadn't been visible from her original overwatch point. One of the Americans appeared to be wounded, a man with radio equipment who was moving with obvious difficulty. Another was working frantically on what looked like explosive devices, probably preparing charges that could breach the compound wall. More importantly, from this closer position Elena could see into some of the compound's buildings. In one structure that appeared to be better built and more heavily guarded than the others, she caught a glimpse of a man who matched the physical description of Khalil Nazari. Her primary target was still in the compound, probably hiding until the firefight was resolved. Elena realized she might be able to accomplish both missions, help rescue the Americans and eliminate Nazari. But it would require precise timing and a considerable amount of luck. She keyed her radio to the emergency frequency the Americans were using and transmitted in clear English, "American forces in the compound, this is Overwatch. I am a friendly sniper providing fire support from your north. Do you copy?" The response came immediately: Overwatch, this is SEAL Team 6 Actual. Confirm friendly sniper. Your fire support has been effective. Can you provide covering fire for movement to the east wall? Elena felt a moment of professional respect. SEAL Team 6, that explained the high level of tactical proficiency she had observed. These were some of the most elite soldiers in the American military. SEAL Team 6, Overwatch confirms. I can provide covering fire, but be advised I have limited ammunition remaining. Recommend you prepare for rapid movement when I engage. Copy, Overwatch. Standing by for your signal. Elena surveyed the compound one more time, identifying the Taliban positions that posed the greatest threat to the SEALs' movement toward the east wall. She had 12 rounds remaining and at least 8 priority targets to eliminate. It was going to be close. She began her final engagement sequence, starting with the Taliban fighters who had the best angles on the SEALs' planned route. Her first shot eliminated a sniper who had positioned himself in a second-story window. Her second took out a machine gunner who could have swept the entire eastern section of the compound. The SEALs began their movement immediately, recognizing that Elena's covering fire provided a narrow window of opportunity. They moved with the fluid precision of a team that had trained together for years, each man knowing exactly where his teammates would be and how to support their movement. Elena continued engaging targets, her shots carefully spaced to create maximum confusion among the Taliban fighters. She eliminated 2 more fighters who tried to pursue the SEALs, then shifted her aim to suppress a group that was attempting to set up a new machine gun position. With 5 rounds remaining, Elena faced a critical decision. She could continue providing fire support for the SEALs' extraction, or she could attempt to locate and eliminate Khalil Nazari before he escaped in the chaos of the firefight. Her CIA handler had been very clear about the priority of the Nazari mission. His intelligence about planned attacks could save hundreds of American lives. Through her scope, Elena saw movement in the building where she had spotted Nazari earlier. A figure was moving rapidly toward what appeared to be a rear exit, escorted by several guards. If he escaped now, it might be months before another opportunity to eliminate him presented itself. Elena made her choice. She swung her rifle toward the building where Nazari was attempting to escape and began calculating the shot. The distance was manageable, but the target was moving and partially concealed by his escorts. She would have one chance to take the shot before her position would be compromised by Taliban fighters who were beginning to triangulate on her location. As Nazari emerged from the building's rear exit, Elena held her breath and squeezed the trigger. The shot was perfect, striking the Taliban commander center mass and eliminating the primary target of her mission. But the shot also revealed her position to the remaining Taliban fighters in the compound. Immediately, automatic weapons fire began impacting the rocks around Elena's position. She had perhaps 30 seconds before the enemy fighters could organize a coordinated assault on her location. With 4 rounds remaining and Taliban forces moving to surround her position, Elena realized she might have accomplished her mission but compromised her own chances of survival. That's when she heard the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors approaching from the south. Air support for the SEALs had finally arrived, and Elena found herself hoping that rescue would extend to one CIA contractor who had gotten herself into more trouble than she could handle alone. The firefight was about to enter its final phase, and Elena wasn't sure any of them were going to make it out alive. The sound of approaching helicopters filled the valley like rolling thunder, but Morrison knew their situation was far from resolved. The Taliban fighters in the compound had not only located their mysterious sniper ally but were also preparing defensive positions to counter the incoming air support. Morrison could see enemy fighters hauling shoulder-fired missiles from storage buildings, surface-to-air weapons that could turn their rescue helicopters into falling debris. Rodriguez, get on the radio with the incoming birds. Tell them we have SAM threats in the compound, Morrison ordered while maintaining suppressing fire on a group of Taliban fighters who were trying to set up a missile launcher. Rodriguez worked his communications equipment frantically. Viper lead, this is SEAL Team 6. Be advised, multiple SAM threats in target area. Recommend standoff engagement until ground assets can neutralize missile positions. The response crackled through their radio, SEAL Team 6, Viper lead. We copy SAM threats. We have 2 Apache gunships and a Black Hawk for extraction. Apaches will engage SAM positions, but we need target designation. Morrison realized they had a coordination problem. The helicopter pilots couldn't identify the missile threats from their distance and altitude, but Morrison's team was pinned down and couldn't get into position to mark targets effectively. They needed someone with elevation and a clear view of the entire compound. Overwatch, are you still operational? Morrison called on the radio frequency their sniper ally had been using. Elena's voice came through, strained but clear. SEAL Team 6, Overwatch is operational but taking heavy fire. I can see SAM positions from my location. Can you mark targets for air support? Negative on traditional marking, but I can eliminate the missile crews if you can keep them distracted for about 60 seconds. Morrison looked at his remaining ammunition and knew they could maintain suppressing fire for that long, but it would leave them critically low on rounds for any subsequent fighting. It was a calculated risk. Use their remaining ammunition to help the sniper eliminate the SAM threats, then rely entirely on air support for their extraction. All team members, concentrated suppressing fire on my mark. Keep those SAM crews busy for 1 minute, Morrison ordered. 3, 2, 1, mark. All 5 remaining SEALs opened fire simultaneously, their combined firepower forcing the Taliban missile crews to take cover and abandon their attempts to lock onto the approaching helicopters. The compound filled with the sound of automatic weapons fire as Morrison's team put everything they had into keeping the enemy fighters suppressed. Elena used the distraction effectively. From her position on the mountainside, she had clear shots at the missile operators who were trying to maintain their equipment while under fire. Her first shot eliminated the crew leader of the nearest SAM position. Her second took out the gunner who was attempting to track the incoming helicopters. But Elena's third shot revealed a serious problem. Instead of the clean elimination she expected, the Taliban fighter she targeted spun and fell but then began crawling toward the missile launcher, apparently wounded but still functional. Elena realized she was dealing with equipment failure. Either her rifle scope was slightly off target due to damage from incoming fire, or her remaining ammunition wasn't performing to specification. With only 1 round remaining, Elena faced a critical choice. She could attempt to finish off the wounded missile operator, or she could try to eliminate the crew of the second SAM position that was still attempting to lock onto the helicopters. Either choice carried significant risk. Miss the shot, and American helicopters could be shot down with the loss of multiple aircrew members. Elena chose the second SAM position. The crew there was more organized and closer to achieving a missile lock on the incoming aircraft. She carefully adjusted her aim, compensating for the wind that had picked up as the helicopters approached, and fired her final round. The shot was perfect. The missile operator dropped immediately, and the SAM launcher swiveled away from the helicopters as his assistant attempted to take over the controls. But Elena's rifle was now empty, and she was still taking heavy fire from Taliban fighters who had located her position. Overwatch, SEAL Team 6. What's your ammunition status? Morrison called. SEAL Team 6, Overwatch's Winchester. Out of ammunition and taking heavy fire. I need immediate extraction or I'm going to be overrun. Morrison felt the weight of leadership pressing down on him. His team was also low on ammunition. They were still surrounded by Taliban fighters, and now they had a CIA contractor who was about to be captured or killed on the mountainside above them. The approaching helicopters were their ticket out, but they couldn't abandon someone who had risked her life to keep them alive. Viper lead, SEAL Team 6. We need immediate extraction for both our team and a friendly sniper on the ridge north of the compound. The sniper eliminated the SAM threats but is now under heavy enemy fire. SEAL Team 6, Viper lead. We can see muzzle flashes on the ridge. Apaches are engaging enemy positions around your sniper. Black Hawk will extract your team first, then move to the ridge for secondary pickup. Morrison heard the distinctive roar of Apache helicopter cannons as the gunships began engaging Taliban positions throughout the compound. The 30mm chain guns were devastating to personnel in the open, and Morrison watched Taliban fighters scattering for whatever cover they could find. But the Apache pilots were having difficulty distinguishing between Elena's position and the Taliban fighters who were assaulting it. The mountainside was a confusion of muzzle flashes and movement, and Elena didn't have any way to mark her position for the pilots. Elena pressed herself against the rocks as automatic weapons fire chipped stone fragments around her position. She had found temporary cover behind a boulder, but Taliban fighters were moving up the mountainside from multiple directions. Without ammunition, her only weapons were a sidearm with 2 magazines and a combat knife. Against a dozen or more assault rifle-armed fighters, her chances of survival were minimal. She keyed her radio one more time. "Any American aircraft, this is CIA contractor Elena Vasquez. I am behind the large boulder approximately 50 meters north of the heaviest concentration of muzzle flashes. I am out of rifle ammunition and about to be overrun. If you can't extract me, please don't let them take me alive." Morrison heard the transmission and felt a chill run down his spine. Elena Vasquez, he recognized the name from classified briefings. She was one of the CIA's most effective contractors, responsible for eliminating high-value targets throughout Afghanistan and Pakistan. If the Taliban captured her alive, the intelligence she possessed could compromise dozens of ongoing operations and get numerous American agents killed. "Rodriguez, patch me through directly to Viper Lead," Morrison ordered. "Viper Lead, this is SEAL Team 6 Actual. The sniper on the ridge is CIA contractor Elena Vasquez. She cannot be allowed to fall into enemy hands. Do whatever is necessary to extract her or prevent her capture." There was a brief pause before the Apache pilot responded. "SEAL Team 6, Viper Lead copies. We understand the situation. Black Hawk is inbound for your extraction now. Apaches will provide close air support for contractor extraction." The Black Hawk helicopter appeared over the valley rim, flying low and fast toward the compound. Morrison's team prepared for extraction, gathering their essential gear and preparing to move to the pickup zone that the pilot would designate. But Morrison couldn't shake the image of Elena Vasquez alone on the mountainside, facing death or capture because she had risked her mission to save his team. Elena could hear the Taliban fighters getting closer. They were calling to each other in Pashto, coordinating their assault on her position. She estimated she had perhaps 2 minutes before they would be close enough to overwhelm her defensive position. Her sidearm had enough ammunition to take several of them with her, but the outcome was inevitable. That's when she heard a sound that gave her the first hope she had felt in the past 10 minutes, the distinctive whop of helicopter rotors approaching her position at high speed. One of the Apache gunships was flying directly toward the mountainside, so low that its rotor wash was stirring up dust and debris from the rocky terrain. The Apache pilot's voice crackled over her radio. "Contractor Vasquez, Apache 77. We are going to suppress the enemy positions around you, then attempt pickup. When you hear our guns stop firing, move to the flat area 30 meters downslope from your current position. You'll have about 20 seconds before they reorganize." Elena acknowledged the transmission and prepared for the most dangerous sprint of her life. The flat area the pilot referenced was completely exposed to enemy fire, but it was the only place the helicopter could hover low enough for her to climb aboard. The Apache's 30mm cannon opened fire, sending devastating rounds into the Taliban positions around Elena's hiding place. The sound was deafening, like continuous thunder echoing off the mountain walls. Elena could hear men screaming and shouting as the heavy rounds found their targets. When the firing stopped, Elena ran. She sprinted down the rocky slope, leaping from boulder to boulder and sliding through loose gravel, focused entirely on reaching the extraction point before the Taliban fighters could reposition and open fire. The Apache helicopter was already hovering over the flat area, its crew chief leaning out of the cabin with a harness ready for her. Elena reached the edge of the flat area just as automatic weapons fire began impacting.